Good morning and welcome to All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church on this Sunday morning for our online service. My name is Jen Gibson and I will be your leader today. We do have several announcements, so I'll start with those. Please remember that the church is still taking pledges. If you have not made your pledge or you just forgot, you can still send those in. Remember that though we are far apart, if you have any pastoral care needs, you may contact Reverend Will at 740-263-1171 or email him at will.allsouls@gmail.com. We have several birthdays this coming week. Those include Morley Smith on the 3rd, Ed Fox on the 5th, and Coben Siroid on the 7th. This week we shared in an email about an LGBTQ+ and women's Rite event, and that's being held locally by 2 women here in Belleville. If you do plan on going, they ask that you wear a mask and socially distance. That event happens today at Main Street Bandstand from 2 to 4 p.m. If you have any other announcements that you wish to share with our community, please feel free to put those in the Facebook comment feed. Let us prepare for this day. Open our hearts and minds as we begin with the prelude, Arioso, performed by the trio. At this time, I invite you to light a candle in your place of worship as we open this service. Thresholds by Arlen Goff. Thresholds. We cross them every day, from room to room, from outside to inside and back again, from here to there, from anywhere and everywhere, from age to age. Each threshold offers an opportunity for change, for renewal, for transformation, from what we were to what we are to what we can be. In this hour and in this place, we cross a threshold from our day-to-day everydayness into space and time attuned to one another, to the sacred, to the holy, into the awareness of new life pregnant with possibilities. How will we be renewed in this moment? How will we be changed by this hour? How will we be transformed through this gathering of beloved community? Come, you longing, thirsty souls. Come, let us worship together. We'll take a moment now for you to share any joys and concerns you may have. You may type a message in the Facebook feed for all to see and respond to. While you are interacting, I will light a candle for all the joys that we share today. I will light a candle for all those concerns that we share today. And the last candle I light is for those joys and concerns that we keep in our hearts. We have a short story from our speaker today, Christopher Reynolds. We'll play that for you right now.
This song is The Wisdom of the Vessel. My family had a sailboat for a long time, and when my father was passing, he had been sick suddenly, but he asked me then, I went to see him in the hospital, he asked me if I would call his mother. And so I knew that he had started going backwards in time. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll call your mom. And so I went and I pretended on the phone, and they still had phones that you do this. I said, hello, Mrs. Reynolds, your son is here. And I said, well, where are you waiting for her? He's like, said to me like I was supposed to know. I'm at the train station. I go, yeah, I don't know which way. He goes, the Chicago train station. I'm like, okay. He's at the station. He's waiting for you to come get him. So I put down the phone, and he was relaxing. And then he started folding his bed sheets. And I go, Dad, what are you doing? He says, I'm folding these sails. I go, well, let me help you. And then he's over here with his IV tube. I go, what are you doing? He goes, I'm securing these sheets. And so on a sailboat, the ropes are called sheets. So he says, I'm getting the ropes ready. I said, I got that, Dad. So he'd look around, and I said, okay, Dad, the boat's secure. And then he would sit down for like a minute, and then he'd back up again. And so, we did that for like 2 hours. Fold the sails, check the sheets, make sure the ship is secure. And that was my father preparing his vessel. And it was about a year after he had passed, I had a dream. And the dream looked as real as, like, I'm sitting here, real as if you're sitting in a room. And my father came into the room, and I was like, wow, this is real. And my dad didn't say anything. He just shook his head. I said, so I know I'm in a bed sleeping somewhere, and here I am talking to you. And he's like, yeah. I said, I know that you're coming, and this is going to be the last time I'll see you. Just that. But it was like last time I'll see you like that. It wasn't like I'll never feel that love. So anyway, it just was a great gift. And even though my father has crossed, in some ways we get along better since he died than when he was alive. His love just comes and reaches me. Anyway, the song, The Wisdom of the Vessel, is based on the idea that the word Sophia means it's the word that's at the root of philosophy, but Sophia at its root means having a gentle hand tiller of your boat, on the control of your vessel. I've been weeping for a long time. My soul cries me in dreams, my son. See the starry horizon calls beyond the seas. Yeah, but it's like I can't quite catch my breath or lose the ache in my chest. My son, feel the sails stretch when the wind blows, carries the ship. And trust the wisdom of the vessel with a fine and gentle touch. Secure the halyards and the canvas, wing and wing, plain the reach to you, man who was my father. I still miss you too much, though I still see you in my dreams. Don't forget your touch. Trust the wisdom of the vessel with a fine and gentle touch, and secure the halyards, the canvas, wing to wing, plain the reach. My son, see the starry horizon calls beyond the seas, though I still see you, love the life here in you and me. And trust the wisdom of the vessel with a fine and gentle touch. Secure the halyards and the canvas, wing and wing will plain the reach. Trust the wisdom of the vessel. Secure the halyards and the canvas.
I was thinking about this week and what it means to most of us, maybe all of us, the coming election, the changes that are occurring daily during this unpredictable and unprecedented pandemic. For all of us, we'll get through it. But our privilege may allow that. But for others out there, our friends, our neighbors, even some of our own family members, maybe even you, these times are definitely harder. When preparing for today, I found this prayer, and I want to share it with you as our pastoral prayer today. Prayer for Weary Times by Margaret Weiss. Holy One, Our hearts are weary, are tired, and are breaking. Our hearts are stretching as they are pulled and pushed, bruised and battered by all the suffering and brokenness and pain. Our ears are ringing with harsh words, with yelling, with gunfire that echoes in our streets and takes lives of innocents without cause. They're ringing with the affirmation that Black lives matter again and again until this idea is manifested in our legislation, our communities, and in our hearts. We have heard stories of inequality and justice, but our eyes burn from the instances of inequality, racism, and injustice that illustrate we are so far from where we hope to be. Our mouths speak words of hope, of courage, of truth, and at times we find that words do no justice. The brokenness feels too big. Our bodies, our collective bodies, built for lifting one another up and built for holding each other in love. They're being used against one another as weapons and ammunition. That's hatred and fear. Spirit of life and love, in this time of dissidence, in this holy time of urgency to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves, help us find our voice. Help us to see beyond the brokenness in a time of healing and true community. Help us to remember that the only journey toward healing is one that's paved through humility, acceptance of responsibility, and counteracting complacency. Ours is not a solitary journey, but one taken together, bolstered by deep listening and rooted deeply in love. May we find the strength needed for the journey here, in this place, and in all places where people gather for love, for humanity, and for justice. Peace be with you. We have another video from Christopher. We'll play that for you now.
So hello, welcome to the home base again. I guess I'm here anyway, aren't I? So the song, Over Every Road. The story, there's lots of them like this. If you ask people who love each other very much, this particular person was part of a group I was with in the 1990s. He was an old guy who lived in Australia. And he had become a Buddhist, he and his wife, loved each other very much, and she was slowly declining. And then when she was about to pass, they invited some nuns called Karuna with the letter K. Karuna nuns came to their home and set up the two beds next to each other, and they sang for it must have been 7 or 8 hours. They were singing these prayers, and while that was going on, this person, whose name is Tom, said he could feel his wife's spirit come into his body, and then they merged as one, and it was so powerful. He was just weeping and weeping for 3-4 hours straight, and his heart was, as he went through it, it was warmer and warmer. And then he said when it felt like his wife knew he was going to be okay, she slowly lifted away, and from then on, she was always close. So this kind of experience is normal for human beings, that the people we love, they don't disappear. Love just changes shape. So this is called the heart of heaven. In our science, way in the early part of the century, this was called the telepathic law. And in the Irish tradition, it's called the great song, that we're inside a great love song. There are tales of long ago. The singers sing of lovers, how they fell in love, how they weathered this world and each other. And the stories tell, though death may pass between them, still every road that you will travel. Oh, this beauty raises up the world, and it gives our lives a reason. May our hearts grow fonder through every passing season. Oh, our souls will tell, should death e'er pass between us, still our love will grow, for our love is the heart of heaven. Go up on the ridge to where you look out at the river, and you'll feel me standing near. You will remember my love, remember the promise I promise you. In this world and together, forever shall I love you, over every road you travel. Forever shall I love you, over every road you travel.
Our affirmation today is from Michael Solwasser. It's a reflection on our 7 principles. If you'd like, as I read the 7 principles, this also has some explanation to those. But if you'd like, speak along at home our 7 principles. We, the member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association, convent to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We promote the first and most honored principle of our association by opening our pulpit to all. We affirm the dignity of every person when we value their thoughtful and heartfelt opinions enough to provide a forum to express them. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relationships. When our speech challenges the injustice and the inequality we see and experience in the world, we are called to do so with compassion for the oppressor as well as the oppressed. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregation. It is often through words that we demonstrate acceptance or rejection of someone else's spiritual journey. By choosing our words carefully when expressing our individual beliefs, we can encourage others on their chosen path by intentionally acknowledging the spokes of their spiritual center. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. How better to affirm and promote a free and responsible search than to provide a marketplace for those who are searching to share the fruits of their quest. The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregation and in society at large. Free speech is the cornerstone of democracy. When repressive regimes seize power, speech is the first freedom they crush. When people rise up, it's because they are emboldened by speech that's free. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. This is our challenge, to broaden the sphere of our influence, to build a community of whose outside these walls. If today strengthens our convictions, then we have done well. Respect for the interdependent web of the existence of which we were all a part. We are intimately connected and profoundly dependent on one another. Not the least of what we need from one another is the infusion of new ideas, new ways of thinking that help us to better understand each other and ourselves. We'll now take a moment for our offertory. Remember that if you'd like to pledge or donate to All Souls electronically, you may do so by downloading the Tithely app available for Android and iPhone. The link to our website is scrolling below. Our offering is accepted in grateful appreciation so that we may continue our good work in our church and in our community and the world at large. Our offertory hymn is performed by Shelley Mock. It is America the Beautiful. Let us now take a moment for meditation. In the pagan tradition, which is grounded in the respect and reverence for the natural world, calling upon the four directions is usually the way they begin any ceremony. Each direction associated with an element of the natural world and represents some part of our human nature as well. The directions are not seen as separate and isolated, but rather as a part of the interdependent system that makes up the world. We'll travel through the meanings associated with each direction before entering a time of meditation. Sit back and relax. We begin in the east toward the rising sun. The element of the east is air, represented by feathers. Air and breath give us life. It's a direction of inspiration, the word that literally means to take in air. The east is associated with the mind, with knowledge and learning and intellectual curiosity. Imagine the birds turning and wheeling in the air. Imagine the breeze blowing through your hair. Turning toward the east, we look for a fresh start, a reinvigorating breath, a new idea. When you're feeling stuck in a rut, beholden to routine, or if the wind has gone out of your sails, look eastward. We move around the wheel to the south. The element of the south is fire. In the southern place, our chalice burns bright. Fire is a transformative force. It is heat and light and powerful change. In the northern hemisphere, it makes sense that we associate the south towards the equator with the warmth of the sun and the heat of the flame. We see birds move south, butterflies move south, and whales moving south, seeking warmer places when the weather gets cold. When our internal weather gets cold, turning south is a metaphor for turning inward to warmth and daylight, seeking out the changes that will warm us up, get our blood moving, call us out of our winters, out of hibernation, and into action. Continuing around the circle, we arrive at the west. The element is water. We add to this water each year, symbolizing the way that we come together in our community as individual drops joined into a mighty river. In the West, we are drawn into the experiences of our emotions. It's a direction that calls us to self-reflection and self-understanding. Our emotions move in us like water, flowing through our lives, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, but always flowing. When we dam up our feelings, just like when we dam up a river, the pressure builds until it finds an outlet. If you are seeking to get in touch with your inner life, with your emotions, turn towards the West. We move now to the North. The element of North is earth. There is stability here. The ground of our being. The North represents the place that holds us, that allows us time and space to heal and grow, to feel nurtured and respected. It's also a place of embodiment, of connecting with our physical self, with the concrete, tangible world around us. The North calls you if you were seeking balance, the deep wisdom that lies in your bones, a place of rest and recovery. We've moved through the four directions, giving them shape and meaning. East, air, breath, and inspiration. South, fire, transformation, and action. West, water, feeling, and reflection. North, earth, balance, and wisdom. Now I invite you where you are to turn to the direction that calls you today. You can stay in your seat, you can stand, you can turn your head or your whole body, but orient yourself in one of the directions, the element that speaks to you in your life right now. Our speaker today is Christopher Reynolds. In traditional cultures, when the time of rite passage occurs, the elders gather to discuss the key themes of life: death, inferiority and evil, falling in love, soul purpose, unexplained illness and accidents, loyal friends, spiritual experiences, the deep need for beauty and initiality ordeals. Chris shares on this theme and fields notes from other communities. He invites a kickoff study of death, what persons say about it versus what is in the sacred texts. Chris, you have the lectern.
So much. Thank you for the invitation. I'm always lifted up when I come here. Numerous times during the services, every time I've been in All Souls, it was, I have pride in being a human being. If human beings are doing this in this community, I always am honored and feel good to be a part of it. So I'm just grateful. The rite of passage that we're in is, it's similar to other rites of passages. And so I'm asking you to imagine that we've already gone through a separation of the things that were, and we're in a time of transformation, and then there's a time of return that's down the road a little bit. But right now we're in the liminal space. We're in the time in between. And so Jen said, we come out of time to come in to be in service, to be in this middle time. Well, this is what we're doing, but as an entire planet. And with that in mind, as a nation, there are the directions that Jen talked about there's kind of two big areas of initiation or rites of passage. And the first one comes when you're coming out of childhood into adulthood. And that's so you are not afraid of your life. And where you're moving in the beginning of your life is the east. The goal is to increase everything, increase. But once you cross over into the next direction of the south, your goal is achievement and to not be afraid of life and to really go for it. And that first set of the stories around the rite of passage in that first one is called the lesser mysteries because they're the ones that came first, not that they're worth less. So then you're coming around the other way. At the end of the time of achievement, there's another rite of passage that you move from the time of achievement to the time of bestowal, which is the time of generosity and gift giving for all people in all places and to take care of the ones that need the help the most. And if I was going to just spitball about the American rite of passage, I would say we've moved through a time of achievement that's been pretty good, but we're at a time now when the days of achievement can give way to times of a season of gift giving. We're a culture, I think, that's recovering what the elders used to do, that there comes a time when you don't have to stop, when you don't have to keep improving your score on the golf course. You can start to focus and help the next generation. And I think that nationally, that's what's going on. As in your tradition, I think maybe the first Unitarians were the Druze 1,000 years ago. And so I'm taking some notes from the Druze and I'm stealing them and bringing them forward. So the Druze are a group that's in a couple of mountains in Syria and Jordan, and they're still in that area today. They've been there ever since. They were going through a very stormy time, and originally they were Muslims. And one of their leaders said, we ought to sit down and talk about the things that we know, because right around that period of time, what was happening was that the people were traveling to India on boats, they were going to Egypt, and they were seeing the world. The people were seeing things that the holy books that they were using in their community, there was nothing in there like that at all. So he called a meeting. He said, let's all sit down and figure out what it is that we know and what we would like to take forward and what do we want to set down. And they put all the information they wanted to carry forward in these boxes. So I brought a box. This is not a Druze box. They have a few of them left. Anyway, I met this Druze fellow in Nebraska, and he told me this story that I'm telling you now. That the Druze, the Muslims don't have reincarnation, but the Druze do. And it's because their people had gone to India, and it was something that they wanted to bring into their world. And there's a number of things from other cultures that the Druze carried into their own culture because they sat down and they all talked to each other about the key things in life and what do they know. So, I'm inviting, I've been doing this as best I can with my family and with my friends and with everybody I'm connected with. But I'm encouraging you here at All Souls, sit down and work on the box. And the way you do it is not just bring in books from other places, but listen to what people's stories are. And there are huge amounts of stories that don't fit inside the old molds anymore. It's almost like everybody, like the Grinch in the story of the Grinch, his heart increases 3 times. But everybody's heart has increased 3 times, and they just don't fit into the old molds anymore. And so to just listen to the stories. So, in the box, first is your homework for the next 60 years. Talk about these things. And what you're after is a feeling that you have enough that you're at peace with the question being asked of you. So number 1 on the list is contemplation of death. Your the person I talked to, I think her name is Jen from your community. Shelley. So Shelley actually has died and come back. Like those kind of people that die and come back, those are gold in your community. So find out what they know. And the essence of what we talked about, she said, you know, it's really important that people think about how do you want to live? And then how do you want to die? And this kind of settles down upon the idea of, well, what happens when we die and what is that like? And so the first thing in a rite of passage is to contemplate death or to look at it seriously and don't be afraid of it and ask people who died and learn about it. Learn from everybody. The second is when you feel inferiority, shadow, not good enough, or evil, or you witness in the world what's going on, and it fits in those categories. How do you come to terms with it? The next one, falling in love and entering into the mysteries of sexuality and gender. All those stories. The next one, a name change. People, a lot of us weren't given the name that who we really are. And there are a lot of persons I've met and you've met probably that you make a name change to try to get a name that fits your life. And this is a big thing in Native communities, that you get a name that is you, but it's also the clan that your spirit belongs to. Naming is important. Next is to look carefully at accidents and illnesses and things that take people out of the loop, like COVID, that there's more going on here than just a disease. It's a symbolic timeout, and it's all to be looked at very carefully. Next is a deep need for beauty. What's the beauty that you love? What's the beauty that you would like to make for the world and to give it? So I asked Shelley about the beauty that sustained her after her experiences. She said Neil Donald Walsh, the Conversations with God book, very important for her. She said the movie Field of Dreams and the movie The Matrix, but the Field of Dreams was her favorite. And she said it's because it shows a person who has to learn how to trust what's guiding versus what people are saying outside. He's supposed to not lose his farm and he's in trouble, so she recommended Field of Dreams as something that had been supportive for her. But to have that talk with everybody, what's the beauty that lifts you up? What keeps you going? And learn about it and share. Loyalty to friends, thoughts and experiences in God and religion that may never come again. And to have that conversation is, what are the experiences that people are really having? And the last one is a desire for meaningful ordeals that really test you. A true rite of passage. And in my family, I'm the historian. When we got here, so we arrived in America around 1740. When we got here, our family was already drunk. And it was pretty much constant for like 200 years. And when I studied it, I got to study it because my family found sobriety through my mom and dad in the 12 steps. But I started to ask, well, how did this start in the first place? And the place it started always, every generation, it starts at adolescence, and it starts because there is no rite of passage, and the kids just fall through the cracks. And so in my family, my cousin Karen and I have been trying, we have a sweat lodge at her house, and we're trying to bring the sweat tradition to her sons, and to try to, now my daughter is sweating, and so we're just trying to bring in a way to go through a death and rebirth experience in the presence of adults that you can let go of what you're carrying and get some guidance. So that's what's been going on in my family in a short look at the list. So the contemplation of death. Our culture is lacking language to talk about what happens when you die and have this journey and then come back. The person who really got life after death, life after life going is Ray Moody. And Ray Moody has published a book called Shared Death Experiences, where you're with a person who's dying, and the person who's with the person dying sees the same thing that the dying person is seeing, a shared death experience. And his most recent one is a discussion on language that doesn't make sense at all. And it's in Plato, but when Aristotle, 2,000 years ago, took over for Plato, Aristotle left out that language. And what Moody is doing is going back to language that doesn't seem to make sense. He calls it the unexplainable. So, when you start to talk about a near-death experience, you're leaving the language of the everyday, and you're starting to cross into a language that Plato said that this language that you cross into when you start describing things that can't be described in everyday language is actually a finer language. It's a mythological language. And I think this was the message of James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake. So I want to just share one line from Joyce to thank him for keeping this way of speaking alive, and I'll end with a story from my uncle. Cleast, key, sense, corpus, orgus, you goof visibility in frisking, of mist the cases among the goats, hill cat and plain mousy. And so the whole book is this. You have to read it out loud, and he's out of his mind. And what he's doing is speaking in this language that somehow he's saying about 10 things at the same time. This is the training you do well to have when you start to listen to someone's near-death experience. So, my uncle died and came back, and he said that, so when we're crossing into this story, everything in this story is symbolic. It has meanings in it upon meanings. It's a language that's beyond a normal language, so just to say, we're crossing in. He was in the chapel near where he grew up called St. John the Fisher, and he was looking at the stations of the cross, because we're Catholic, on the wall, and they were going by, and they stopped at the 13th, and he said it stood in front of him, and then it got larger, and he looked, and this is in the stations of the cross, the 13th station is Jesus is taken down from the cross and given to his mother. Michelangelo's Pietà, where Mary is holding the crucified Jesus off the cross, that's the 13th station. So he's there, and he says, he looks at the mother, and it's his mother. He's like, oh my God, that's my mom. And then what starts to happen, it gets larger, and then all of a sudden, he's not sitting there looking at this picture. He is the Christ. He's the Christ, and he's laying in his own mother's arms, and he's weeping. And he said, the light in that space is all loving. It was predominantly white. There was red and blue, but I looked into my mother's eyes, and she accepted everything. Anything I had ever done, she let me know that it was okay. So he's in this condition in the arms of his mother in the spirit world. Then he said someone's started jerking on his neck. He's like, what? And it was the nurse, and the nurse said, Mr. Donovan, it's time to wake up. He says, what? I don't want to wake up. I don't want to wake up. And so he got jerked back into this world. But he didn't tell me this story for a long time, but he was moping around. I said, did something happen? And so he told me this story. And because I do sweat lodge and I know the native tradition, when you do a sweat lodge, you are dying and going into the spirit world, and then you're coming back. I said, Dan, I can show you how to just go there and visit your mom and come back. Like you can do that. You don't have to be a cannonball waiting. And so we sat a few times, and I did ceremonies with my uncle. And it was a couple years later then. He gave me this as a gift. It's from the medieval times. It's the 13th station. It's Jesus being taken down from the cross. And he said, he's been able to carry it forward, and he did a lot of work. He was in Alcoholics Anonymous himself. He did a lot of work with people, and he said he had started giving this out for special persons, and he said the teaching is he did his work, now you do yours. He did his work, now you do yours. And so during this time, we're in a rite of passage. It's time to talk to each other and to allow everything to be accepted, be loving to each other. And all the generations before did their work, and now it's time for us to do ours. So it's always a profound honor to be with you. And I'm inviting you to start working on your box. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah. We'll play one more video from Chris.
The song, I'm calling this The Fox and Arrow, like an Irish pub. It has other names for it. It's because the subject matter, I think, is pretty intense, and so I'm trying to deliver this package. And what the package is, in my family, the most impactful near-death experience was my uncle's. And he was having an operation, and all of a sudden he's in the other world. And it's kind of a long story, but the color that he saw, he said it's predominantly white. And it wasn't like white, like shining in your eyes like that. It's this luminosity, and it's a place of pure love. And there's some of the old gospel tunes. There's a land that's brighter than day. By grace we can see it afar. And all over the earth, there's a description of a loving light that's like that. And so I'm going to dare say that I think the light belongs to the moon. It's the moon's light. It's connected to the traditions around birth and initiation and life and death. And I think that love, because all over the planet, it doesn't matter, even if you're an atheist, like no matter who you are, people seem to encounter this gentle light that accepts all that is. And I think when you say that that light belongs to you, that that light is your God's light, that's the root of any kind of supremacy that you want to call it. But when you say that I own that light, I think it's like saying we own the moon. Nobody owns the moon. And so this song is actually, I'm responding to, from Moby Dick, when they're chasing the white whale, the author, Herman Melville, talks about the whiteness in this way. But not yet have we solved the incantation of this whiteness and learn why it appeals with such power to the soul, and more strange and far more portentous, why, as we have seen, it is at once the most meaning symbol of spiritual things, nay, the very veil of the Christian's deity, and yet should be, as it is, the intensifying agent in things the most appalling to mankind. And so this song, at the end, I'm going to lead up to it. I'm asking the question, who would steal the moon for a gun or with a gun or to trade it off? I think this light, this love, doesn't belong to anybody's one tradition. And I think getting square with that this, like the moon's light that belongs to everyone, so is the light that people talk about. I'm getting help from the audience. So this is, she's invisible, but it's Jen. She's going to be doing her part. How many nodes must a man gulp down? 3 loads to be amen.
How many seeds must the white glove trail?
How many seeds must the white glove trail? 5 seed take 6, make 10. How many times must the cannonballs fly? J. Lemon made the cannonball man. Who am I? Am who answers this song? Who am I? Am who answers this song? Who am I? Am who answers this song? Who am I? Am who?
How many lines must a plan make up?
How many lines must the plan make up? When do you nail the deepest blue?
How many beers must one man have?
How many beers must one man have? When do you hear the dead talk to?
How many deaths will it make a Cheeto?
How many deaths will it make a Cheeto? Who doubts the other point of view?
How many beers can a fountain enlist?
How many fears can a fountain enlist? 9 was 10 plus 1.
How many mirrors can the people infest?
How many mirrors can some people infest? Living by whose son?
How many times can a man burn his bed?
How many times can a man burn his bed? Who steals the moon with a gun? Who am I? Am who answers this song? Who am I? Am who answers this song? Who am I? Am who answers this song? Who am I? Am who?
How many roads must a woman walk down?
How many roads must a woman walk down before they called her a man?
As we close the service and extinguish the chalice, please listen to these words. As we go forward into this frightening, exhilarating, confusing, miraculous world, may we offer our comfort to the afflicted, our love to those who are lonely, and our wish for all to be safe. Thank you for joining us today. Please stay with us as we have our postlude from the trio, Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen.
Thank you.